Hello everyone, welcome to Cyberscoop TV. Greg Otto, your managing editor here. We're coming to you from the floor of the 2018 RSA conference, and I'm talking with Sol Cates, VP of Technical Strategy for Thales. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, election security is a big thing that we have been talking about now for a few months. The government has made huge pushes in terms of money and in terms of effort to help out states upgrade their election security. Do you see those millions of dollars that have been going out to the states as a good first step? Is it enough? I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah, I think funding is definitely good, right? For anything when you're trying to do security, whether it's elections or corporate security, at the end of the day, you have to have the funds to help invest in. I think the big questions that I have around where the money's being spent and how it's being spent is really the focus on what part of the problem I try to solve. Is it the registry? Is it the actual tally? How are they correlating things like electric, elections versus, traditional paper trails and so forth? Are they looking to do parallel voting systems where you're going to register to vote in both, and that way you can have a way to verify that only one person was voting for one time? So there's multiple different techniques for how are you going to do the tallying of the vote as well as the registering of who should be able to vote. But when it comes to the funding, I think the biggest question is where's that money going, who's appropriating it, how are they looking through the problem, and are they reaching out to industry for advice? Because no offense to government, but quite often they struggle when they're trying to do innovation.
Right. So let's talk about the vendors a little bit. What are you seeing from the vendors as this has sort of grown into a greater discussion among cybersecurity experts? Because we've seen these stunt hacks where machines have been popped to play Pac-Man, but I would feel like that's a little bit of a stretch in a practical manner.
Sure.
So I'm wondering what the vendors are doing in order to satisfy what they need to in order to make sure that the election stays secure.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different focus points, right? One is integrity, right? So making sure the integrity of the vote, the tally, the registration, all the information and its life cycle, right? So from when somebody registers the vote all the way to when they execute their vote, making sure that that person is that person, they haven't changed jurisdictions or districts, they haven't lost the right to vote for any reason. So the integrity of the voter is a big piece. I think the integrity also and the protection of the data, the actual tallies at the end. So big focus on database security. Traditional databases, there's nothing uniquely different about a voting database versus a Oracle database supporting a transaction for a bank.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's data is data. So it's really focused on data security more than anything else. And I think the other part they're focused on is reducing the potential impact of a breach or a hack. So things like decentralizing information, and rather than centralizing it in one state or one jurisdiction and decentralize it down to the county level, let them boil up. I think where I've seen some interesting innovation is looking at things like blockchain for voting.
Okay.
Right? Because then you can decentralize things within a particular jurisdiction, like a state. Every county has their own node or sets of nodes within that county, and they use that to propagate the tally of the votes, make sure it's a one and done. Only each person who has a wallet, each individual could have a wallet and actually vote without wallet and only could do it one time, and everybody sees that they did do it, but they don't get to see who they voted for and who that human is.
Right.
So things like that are becoming interesting potential plays on how do you do secure elections in the future that are more technology focused than the traditional model of let's figure out how we secure the old way of doing voting in elections.
So while the future does look like it is, that stuff will be experimented with.
Yes.
We're still stuck with what we have now, and there's a very interesting apparatus that goes on about it. We were just talking about the direct voting machines and the hacks that go on there, but I would love to hear your opinion on some of the conversations going around the supply chain with how the voters or the voting machines are getting their software from vendors or
their hardware.
Right, and then the supply chain from almost like a voting perspective in the overseas voting and how that is tallied. How does that all work into the conversation around election?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think a lot of conversations that Thales has been having is around we call it secure manufacturing. Nowadays more people are having this conversation of IoT, right? A bunch of voting machines is a bunch of things, and you have to figure out what's the provenance of the software, the hardware, the firmware, the actual manufacturer, suppliers themselves. Do all the bits fit together and actually make a whole thing that we all know and trust. So there are a lot of techniques that can be deployed in those types of machines to actually produce a more trusted platform. And I think that's where you'll see a lot more investment over the next couple of years, is how do we figure out how to lock down the supply chain at an atomic level and use things like signatures and trust models like PKI, which they're actually getting a rebirth.
Right.
I mean, 20 years ago we all hated PKI. It's having a big rebirth in things like IoT, supply chain, and blockchain in particular. So I think you'll see more and more of that over the next couple of years.
Great. So appreciate your insight. Thanks for stopping by to talk to us a little bit.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
For all of our videos, check out our YouTube channel, and for more on election security and all things cybersecurity, check out cybersoup.com. I'm Greg Otto. Thanks for watching.